Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Jonathan Bennett. He left an executive role at a large hospital to strike out on his own, founding a management consulting firm, and for 10 years, things were great. The company grew, became a B Corp, and served hundreds of organizations. The problem was he was unfulfilled, and I'm guessing he'll tell us a little more about that in today's episode. However, after a successful exit, in which he went through a management buyout of his company, Jonathan founded his coaching practice so that he could fulfill his purpose to create an intimate space for leaders who need to be listened to deeply. Jonathan is an advisor and executive coach to founders, CEOs, and C-suite leaders who have a purpose in the world but need help solving their organization's toughest obstacles. He takes his experience as a CEO, board member, and founder to his coaching. As a feminist and social justice advocate, Jonathan brings a progressive approach to his work so that clients always find a way out of even the most complex challenges. Before we dive into today's episode, Jonathan, welcome. And would you share something about yourself personally?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure, Sarah. So something about me personally, I'm a dad. I have two beautiful kids. My eldest kid is autistic and is a trans woman. And that journey for me has been profound. I've learned a ton about what it's like to be, walking alongside somebody as they discover who they are and how they experience the world as an autistic person has been really, well, I mean, it's just completely changed the way I show up in the world. So I'm happy to share that, and I like it when people know that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also the parent of an autistic kid, and it is full of learning experiences, and sure has made me an even stronger advocate as someone who used to work professionally in the autism self-advocacy space.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's a topic for another time, but I think there's a lot of alignment between the advocacy for trans or gender nonconforming kids and kids who express themselves in social situations differently in other ways, like kids on spectrum and ADHD. I see so much alignment there. So I can imagine a little bit about what your journey has maybe been like. Well, excellent. Well, let's switch to management, leadership. Would you just tell you, this is a great story that you've been through. What was it, that journey? I'd love for you to tell me about leaving the hospital, starting the management company, landing in coaching. What were you searching for something the whole time? What was that journey like for you?
I think I ended up on the senior team of a large hospital without a lot of career planning. One thing led to another. Like at school, like back at university, all I wanted to do, like I have an English degree. All I wanted to do was to become a novelist and a poet. And I did that. Wrote 7 books and toured the country and had a really successful career. And I felt great. But here's the thing, kids, poetry doesn't pay. So I needed a job, and I ended up in corporate communications, which led to kind of general management over time, and that was great. But it was a huge job, and hospitals are open 24/7. We were building a new hospital. I live in Ontario, Canada, and so it was a really, I sort of describe it as 3 free MBAs, because there was a huge construction project. We burned through 2 CEOs during my time there, and work started 7:45 in the morning and ended at 11 o'clock at night, and it was not compatible with being a dad of a young kid that turns out was autistic. So I was kind of burning out, and I didn't really know who I was. And so one of the things that I had picked up during my time there was the planning portfolio, and I'd led the hospital through 2 strat plans. And my heart was really drawn to that, being able to kind of conduct strategy and do deep stakeholder engagement. So that's what I did. I kind of hung out a shingle, and I thought that's really what I want to focus on, and that's what we did over the course of the next 10 years. We're largely a strategy shop, and we focused only on nonprofit leaders, nonprofit organizations, and I've done hundreds of strategic plans and operational plans and all kinds of stuff like that, and countless focus groups with stakeholders. And and I think we did them differently. There's lots of management consultants that don't come from the sector, and I really did. So that meant for me sitting cross-legged on the ground with kids. If that was the stakeholder group that we had to speak to, we went to fly-in communities and did all kinds of work with Indigenous folks across Canada, sitting in circles with seniors and listening to stories. That was really the work that sort of felt profound, because you can only build good decision making in a boardroom if you've got the voices of those folks that you serve, and also who do the work. I didn't mention staff and volunteers, of course, there. So, it was that work over time that really kind of informed the practice that
Mhm.
grew. And it was a real blessing to be able to do that work and serve so many social service and healthcare, arts and culture organizations over those 10 years.
Yeah. And so then what was it that what was that experience of realizing it was time to move on? And how did you begin to make that transition?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. So I think I hit a point where, well, 2 things were happening. One, I was getting tired. Growing a company, it's an exhausting all-in experience, and I was really proud of the work that we'd done in the company that we'd built and grown, and we became a B Corp, which felt very important to me as a for-profit company serving nonprofit organizations. To be able to sort of externally prove that we were who we said we were meant a lot to me and my colleagues. But I was getting pretty tired, and also I had an amazing young woman that was coming up behind me, and I realized that she sort of was my succession plan. That if I didn't do something before too long, one of my clients was gonna steal her. She was just so obviously talented. So, under the general heading of get off the stage while the crowd is still clapping, I thought I better do something here. So I stepped back from being CEO, and she stepped into the role. And then we spent 18 months doing a transition. So she sort of found out what it was like to run the company. And it was humbling. I don't mind
Yeah.
telling you. Like everybody around me knew where their bread was buttered, and quickly, orientated to her. And I was sort of like, I'm still here. I couldn't even get a meeting in my own company, but it was pretty great because she, dove right in, and pretty quickly it was clear that she was going to be a great CEO. And so we enacted a management buyout, and that led me to doing the work that I do now, which is more advisory work. I did start a new company, and so I serve organizations and leaders now just by myself, and so it's pretty great. It's really intimate, quite powerful work.
Yeah. That resonates me as someone who has also really been drawn to more intimate work and having downsized, or I call it right-sized, my business for myself, Pivot Ground. My company is now just me, but it was originally a marketing agency with a team and lots of
Mm,
partners that we worked with and did big projects. So that resonates with me. And I'd love for you to maybe, if you have a thought on this kind of right sizing idea, because I think too often we're focused on like growth is like the only direction. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not always the best direction. It's not always the best direction for nonprofit that I serve. Some of them are, too big. Then they've gotten a little
yeah,
unwieldy. So what are your thoughts on that?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of hearing two questions in there. I think for folks like you and I that have grown a business, and then you hit a point where how successful are you, and are you meeting your original and core mission? And maybe the right thing to do is reimagine yourself as a smaller but more focused, you know, entity. And like in our own ways, we've done something quite similar. So I think that sort of speaks to getting back to your core values and making sure that you can do the work that lights up your heart and that is most meaningful for you. And these days, I love the flexibility and the creativity that I can bring to my work. I can just say yes. I can do a consulting project. I can do advisory work. I can do coaching work. I can do board training. Whatever shows up in front of me, if I believe in the person and I think that I can genuinely make a difference, then I can walk alongside them in whatever capacity suits me. And that feels amazing. I feel totally spoiled that I finally got to a point in my career where I have enough tools in my toolkit and enough experience that I can be able to kind of meet folks wherever they're at. As for nonprofits, I really agree. When we've got this scarcity mindset and we're chasing money and we're chasing resources, we begin at saying yes. We assume that bigger is going to be better. We've got boards of directors with for-profit folks on them at times that only have kind of one orientation, which is like the better grow. And, you get into these Frankenstein multi-service agencies that you genuinely don't even understand what they're about. Like, what is the through line? And you only need to do a branding or a marketing project to realize that they can't describe, you know, how they serve their constituents anymore. They've long since forgotten what it is. And it's no knock on them. Like, I completely understand how you get there, but there can be a point where you can say, how do we go about doing clearer work for folks, and how do we make sure that we're reaching people in the right way, and that this isn't just an exercise of getting ever bigger. So I hope I answered your question, but I see it a lot,
Yeah.
and it's an early risk for smaller nonprofits that are thinking about growth. Inevitably, I don't know how it works in the States necessarily, but like, uh, you know, end of year, the government will come out with, oh, we've got leftover money in this pot. Like, could you guys do this thing for us? And you're like, oh, it's sort of close to what we do, but it's not, and then they say yes. And 3 years later, and two more of those, you've got this organization that has alignment issues, has organizational design issues, has like issues of a lack of consistency in roles and maybe even comp. And this is like just coming from them wanting to just be more robust and diversify their revenue streams and all the other things that we tell them to do, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you've hit on some really key things I want to highlight for folks. One is, you said all you have to do is a marketing project, and having been that marketing project person in the past, and it is that scenario that led me into strategy and operation because I kept coming up
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you aren't ready to deal with your marketing problem because the reason, like, we can't really get a great message because you're too scattered. You actually need to clean up organizationally, and not to the other problem I found in
Totally.
marketing is to do great marketing, especially digital marketing, you have to be able to take action quickly and consistently. And that's hard for
Yeah.
a lot of organizations. And so my
Oh, it
wish
really
for the
is.
space is, or for anyone out there thinking about, oh, let's engage with a marketing firm, is that you do some smaller engagement, whether it's with a marketing firm or a strategy person, and there's like crossover in how they both begin their work to figure out if you're
Mhm.
ready for marketing, somebody to come in and help you do
Yeah.
that deep dive, or if what you actually need first is to kind of get a clearer strategic direction. Once you have a clear strategic
Yeah.
direction, even if it's not what you're doing now, a marketing team can like lay out those words so the rest of the world comes on the new direction. But if you don't know what that is, if you haven't, like you said, done that work to that, it
Mhm.
goes back to, the core values work, even for, businesses like ours, you have to have that clarity before you should like take massive action, whether it's marketing or even strategy building.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all that. I mean, you can't brand yourself out of no
Yeah.
strategy, right? And I think that it goes back to like I remember my earliest days. People would come to me and they're like, "Oh, I need a new brochure." Remember when
Yeah.
people had paper brochures of things, and you'd be like, you start to just sort of try to write the copy, and they couldn't answer the most basic questions. And the issue is they just didn't know what they're trying to
Yeah.
achieve, right? And so, like, if you write that large, an organization without a clear strategy and clear purpose, especially one that's been evolving. I mean, we just live in this very dynamic environment. And so, we need to bring people along. We need to set good direction. And it's only then when we can have a clear sense of, who we are and where we're going and why we want the things that we want to achieve and for whom, that we can start to roll out really strong, powerful brands and the kinds of positioning and messaging that marketers can give us. But if we look to them to give us our strategy, like that's totally
Yeah,
backwards.
I totally agree, right? So marketers shouldn't be giving you your whole strategy. Like they can help clarify parts of it. Same with like lawyers. I see this kind of move into the board direction. I see
Oh,
lawyers articulating bylaws, and I'm constantly telling my clients, lawyers are experts in the law, not experts in leadership. And, there's parts of your bylaws that need to comply with law, but the majority of your bylaws are up to your choice, and they should define a leadership system for your board or even your organization that
where's the fire emoji?
hey,
I just want to light.
or
I
tell
just
me,
want to
what does
light this
that bring
up.
up for you?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. So like I'm a governance nerd. I've sat on boards, my whole career. I'm a chartered director and I do lots of governance training. And I really think that boards feel very beholden and or unsure of themselves, especially when there's a lawyer on the board, especially if they've got corporate counsel that's coming in and giving them, what their version of the truth is. I mean, we operate in a very loose framework. If you look at most of what corporate, what most corporate law asks of a nonprofit organization, it's the broadest, loosest
Yeah.
framework. You have lots of room to
Yeah,
color
like
in.
here in the
And
States, most states' laws
yeah,
read basically like you have to have like a secretary and you have
yeah,
to like have more than a majority vote if you want to sell all of your assets. It's like that's usually like
yeah,
and you have to
right.
have bylaws, but we don't really
Yeah.
care what
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, and same in Canada. Ontario, for example, the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. These are just broad frameworks, and you just have a ton of room inside which most of what we've done is we've inherited practice, whether it's Robert's rules or whether it's what is good governance and best practice. Like this stuff gets handed down as if gospel from one generation to the next, and what I'm lit up about these days is that there's a lot of people that are reimagining governance and how does governance occupy a space outside the boardroom? How can we get into more relational? It's not just about having good generative discussions. Like, yeah, we're fiduciaries. Yeah, we need to do strategy. Oh, we need generative space to do generative governance. But there's also this element of now relational governance. How do we do good work with one
Mm.
another? How do we do good work in a good way? How do we be with one another and care about one another around a board table? Because if we're good and we hold one another in a good way, the decision making is going to be better. The thinking's going to be better. So I just think that there's a whole new generation of folks that are coming through that are thinking, what is this weird, like hived off boardroom behavior and system that feels so divorced from reality and or what's going on in the rest of the organization? I just don't think it needs to be that. So I really welcome the kind of energy and appetite for change that's really starting to kind of like come
Yeah,
across.
I love that. As someone who's kind of created their own board framework, I studied that, inheritance. I saw this pattern, right? We are inheriting practices. And I did a little
Mhm.
historical deep dive because I like getting nerdy about things too. And I traced that practice all
Yeah.
the way back to the founding of Harvard in 1635 or 6. Um, right. Where
Wow.
the boards had really different reasons for forming than we have boards today. But I want to touch on
Wow.
this concept of how important good relationships are. There is so much, those laws, I think, create so much room for interpretation. They allow boards to, if they want to, self-assign as much authority, decision-making authority over the organization. I mean, we say don't micromanage, but technically they can if they want to. They could control every little thing. They have the power to give
Mhm.
themselves that power. But when I think, but so, and I think so much of what goes wrong is we don't acknowledge these power dynamics. And so we don't fix them. So, an example of one of the things I've been changing in the system, I have boards don't really make any leadership decisions, including setting strategy. It's really an oversight model. And as part of that, I have boards, they no longer approve the budget. Instead, they confirm that they've looked at it and they've had their questions answered. And what's magical about boards not doing that is the leadership from a coach, what leadership is thinking as they're planning their budget, right? So when their boards are making a budget approval decision, leadership teams they're asking the question, what can I get my board to approve? They're always compromising the best plan for what the board will approve. And when the board stops
Mm.
approving, the leadership team starts focusing on the question, what is the very best financial plan? What is the very best use of money we can have? And the board, now that they're actually end up relieved that they don't have to approve this budget, which they don't fully understand, they actually end up getting more involved in the financial conversation. It's like the pressure's off and the power dynamic
Mm.
has been removed. And all of a sudden, that communication starts to really flow around what's the best way we can spend money and how can we support each other and the organization. So I think what you said is like so, so critical. And if you have any like examples to share of, the power of having that good relationship or how you go about creating that, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, well, I just love everything that you said. We're having a love fest here, folks. I think about like there's this sort of intimate space that happens between a senior leader, like a CEO or an executive director, and the board of directors, and it's in that little space where I like to operate. I think there should be a kind of healthy tension there. It's right for the board to ask and expect, ask hard questions and expect follow up and follow through from management. It's right for management to provide great information, recommendations, all that kind of stuff. And so, like that, you don't want a sleepy board that rubber stamps everything, and you don't want a board that is, counting paper clips. Like somewhere in the middle, there's this just like healthy, strategic, thoughtful, tension that exists that's welcomed on both sides. And, I suppose the thing that's impacted me the most over the course of the last maybe 5 years of my career is I've been doing a lot more work with Indigenous people and Indigenous organizations and First Nations. And they show up to board work in a completely different way. And it's impacted and infiltrated my thinking on governance. So, for example, at the start of a meeting, Anishinaabe people they'll visit. I mean, they have an Anishinaabemowin word for visiting. And to a Western white person, that looks like we're just kind of wasting time and talking about like kids and grandkids and like, why aren't we getting down to business? But what I've learned is when you connect relationally before a meeting, when you pause and take time and you find out how everybody's really doing and you slow it down, you can have a far more expedient, better meeting because you're attuned to one another. Oh, so and so's kid is not doing well. Oh, so and so is just getting over a cold. Oh, so and so is having a hard thing with the thing. And so suddenly the dynamic is much clearer and you alter your behavior and how you're showing up, and your kindness can come up and your empathy can come up, and you can meet people where they're at and where they need to be. And sometimes a room will just self identify like today's not the day for the big discussion
Yeah.
despite it being on the agenda. We are just slaves to these agendas that we create. And often it's just a rinse and repeat from what we did at this board meeting last year. And so, what about if we're 12 actual human beings with lives and we check in at the start? So, I've now taken that work that I sit on a shared governance board, which is majority Indigenous, folks, and I've taken that practice that we do there into all my other, corporate and other like non-Indigenous related boards. And it takes people a while, but I will tell you, just yesterday, I had somebody that's come out of private equity. She is one of the most A-type, fast-thinking, decisive humans ever. And she began at, "Why are you doing this?" to she's now implemented
Yeah.
it in boards because she's seen the power of just slowing down. Even if she's slowing down a tenth, she's saying like that it's changing how her work is occurring. And that just lit my heart up because she thanked me. And I just was like, oh my God, I didn't realize like I'd had that knock on effect. But that to me is that to me is just brings joy to me, because the work that I'm, my learning, I can then pass it on, and, it can have a really positive ripple
Yeah,
effect.
that is so true, and true for staff meetings as well. I have all teach all
Totally.
my clients,
Yes.
to have an intro portion of their team meetings, and I call it a segue, and we have various kind of things, but it is a way to align people into the room and get them ready, and checking in with people
Mm,
personally,
mm,
I think is really, really key. And like you said, it makes them you save the time in the meeting because everyone's ready to be there. They're ready to hear each other. And sometimes you save time, just like you said, but I just want to reiterate it because it's so true. If they're not ready to have the meeting about the thing you plan to talk about because other stuff is going on, you can save a ton of time by just not ending the meeting early, having a nice chat, seeing,
yeah.
maybe you need to address an issue you weren't planning to, or everyone just needs some time to chill and you can regroup.
Hmm.
But there you won't accomplish anything. Even if you think you have, it won't be, if you push through, it won't be authentic. It won't be what people really wanted. And you'll have to redo it anyway. And it'll probably even be harder because it's harder to clean up a mess and then start over than it is to just start the
Yeah.
right way the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This idea of going slow to go fast to me is just so key, so
Yeah.
important. So I love what
And
you
it
just said.
does take some time for people to adjust because so many people have been trained we don't talk about our personal lives, our home lives at work, right? So we have to overcome
Yeah.
that. A simple exercise for those of you listening, like if you're thinking, oh, how do I do this? An exercise, segue activity I like to have people do is we call it a high low from your week or whatever time period, right? What was a high? What was a low? And then we just frame it as share a personal high and a low and a work high and a low. And
Yeah.
simple, people get it. Sometimes when people are doing something new, giving like them a little structure makes them feel more comfortable trying it. Do you have an activity you like to have people
Yeah.
do?
Well, when I'm doing facilitation work, and especially if I'm trying to build trust quickly, to be honest, I'll kind of like put my finger on the scale ahead of time. I'll find somebody in the room
Yeah.
ahead of time, and I'll tell them, I'm going to come around and do a check in, and I'm going to ask a question that's going to sound something like, can you tell me what you're bringing with you today? How are you showing up? And I'd really appreciate it if you would be a little vulnerable and just tell me something that's honest that's going on in your world, because you're going to be tone setting for the rest of the group. If we leave it to chance, sometimes somebody will just say, "Yeah, I'm super busy, man." Next, and like it just gets off on the wrong foot. So sometimes I can just sort of like build success by creating the kind of example
Yeah.
in the first person that would go. So I think, look, frankly, younger people are better at
Yeah.
this. They're in therapy. They'll start sentences with, "So what I noticed is how I'm showing up today," and you're like, "Oh wow, you've done 10 years of therapy," and like it's incredible, right? Because they bring a level of self-awareness, metacognition, mindfulness to business that we have been sorely lacking. It's frankly folks that are my age and older that struggle with these rules that we were taught to not bring ourselves to work, and that we have to protect our, private lives at all costs. And look, work is not your family, and they're not, you might get fired one day. You might have to fire somebody. Like, these are the extremes. And so, there are boundaries, and I'm not saying they're not. But within reason, being yourself and allowing yourself to be yourself at work, in my experience, just leads to better relational dynamics.
I love it. Well, we kind of opened with a little personal intro, but maybe we can be those leaders we're talking about and demo for folks. So if you're up for it, I'm happy to share what I'm showing up with today. And I'd love to hear what you're showing up to this call with today. Good with that?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
So I haven't been feeling well, various things for a few weeks. And finally on Monday, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, which was, exactly, but a relief. And I'm now 2 days into the antibiotics. So I'm starting to feel better. My energy's coming back. But I also very much have on my mind all the things I didn't do because I just was really needing to take it easy. And so trying to just in that space of, yeah, and okay, how do I, get back on track?
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry to hear that. I know it's brutal and tricky thing to navigate. Do you remember getting bitten
I
by a tick?
did. It wasn't for very long. And I had, those kind of telltale symptoms that would come and go. First, I was tired. I was like, maybe I should get tested for Lyme, but then it
Yes.
went away. Then I had joint
Sure.
aches and muscle aches. And I was like, I should get tested for Lyme if this
Mm.
keeps up another day, but it went away. And then I had 2 weeks of sciatica pain, and I don't have that problems. And then I woke up on the
Yeah.
beginning of the 3rd week and it was flaring up again. I was like, wait, can Lyme cause sciatica pain? I Googled it. It's like one of those thoughts as you're falling asleep. Sure enough,
Totally.
it totally can. And the next day I was in the doctor's office.
Well, we're sending you good vibes.
Yeah.
I hope you're feeling
Thank
better
you.
soon.
I am already
Yeah.
on the mend, so I'm feeling good about that.
Good.
And how about you?
I'm glad. How about me? So yesterday I got back from Vancouver. So and I flew a red-eye flight. So I gotta say I'm probably not fully recovered yet. And it was a great meeting. I'm on a board, and we meet in Vancouver a couple times a year, and I'm grateful for it. It was a fantastic meeting, really making great progress. But I'm not the spring chicken I once was, right? Like, who cares, man? I'll just like take the red eye and soldier on. Like, no, actually, dude, like you're 55, like friggin' slow down. So there's some things that I think I'm probably showing up with today as just a bit of humility. Right, the body.
I certainly feel that, right? Yeah, you gotta honor
That's funny.
that. So are you doing
You do.
something to recover or rest?
Yeah, I've got a lot of week this week, and I ditched a bunch of things that probably weren't needed to be done. And next week I've got off, so that'll be good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. For those of you out there who are listening and thinking, oh, maybe Jonathan's a great fit for me. Tell us, Jonathan, what kind of folks are you most interested in having reach out to you? And what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thanks. So I work with folks that are leading social purpose work. So that can be nonprofit CEOs and executive directors. It can be social purpose businesses. I do a bit of everything. So I do advisory work, I do training and board work, strat planning, that kind of stuff. If anything I've said resonated, for sure, feel free to drop me a line. I'm a real person. I do actually respond. And maybe in the show notes, you're going to have a link to, I recorded a private podcast, which is 6 actual sessions of advisory work that I did with real leaders. And with their permission, got them to agree to be recorded. And so you can actually hear me do my work. And I think that's, a good way to understand whether the kind of person I am might be a good fit for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for showing up today with your authentic self, tired from a red eye, but full of wisdom. And thank you out there for listening and for everything that you do in your communities. I encourage you to just join me for a second and take a breath and reflect on how you are doing in this moment. You can have a meeting check-in of 1 with yourself. That's okay too. And go about the rest of your day or listen to the next episode of this podcast that's on your stream, whatever brings meaning and joy to your life. And if you could, take a moment to share this episode or another episode with a colleague or friend who would benefit from it. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.